Solo Leveling by Gong. Chapter 4 Part 1 Daily Quest. Ping. The daily quest has arrived. Jinwoo's eyes shot open. The first thing he did after hoisting himself up was check the time. The clock read just past 4:30 p.m. There were still 7 hours and 30 minutes before midnight. Good. He opened the inbox. Ping. Daily quest. Strength training. Push-ups 100 times. Incomplete, 0 out of 100. Sit-ups 100 times. Incomplete, 0/100. Squats 100 times. Incomplete, 0/100. Running 10 kilometers. Incomplete, 0/100. Warning. Failure to complete the daily quest will result in an appropriate penalty. This again? That was his reflexive response. The more he thought about it, though, the more he realized this might be for the best. This was an improvement over an impossible or incomprehensible quest. He'd be physically tired, but as long as he took his time, it could definitely be accomplished. Jinwoo hit the floor and started doing push-ups. 1. He didn't want to be dragged to a strange place to stare death in the face again. 2. He was fortunate to have survived last night, but there were no guarantees he would do so today. 3. He looked up to inspect the quest screen and noticed his push-ups being recorded. Ping. You have completed 1 push-up. Push-ups 100 times. Incomplete, 7 out of 100. Ping. You have completed 1 push-up. Push-ups 100 times. Incomplete, 8 out of 100. Curious, Jinwoo tried lowering himself down only halfway before pushing back up, and as he expected, it didn't count. He realized why his push-ups hadn't been recorded yesterday. If it wasn't a proper push-up, it wouldn't be counted. Oh, come on! Jinwoo was dumbfounded but kept going. He still had 50 push-ups left, and he had sit-ups, squats, and running waiting for him. And like that, 3 hours passed. Push-ups 100 times. Completed, 100 out of 100. Sit-ups 100 times. Completed, 100 out of 100. Squats 100 times. Completed, 100/100. Running 10 kilometers. Incomplete, 9/10. Huff, 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 huff. Jinwoo was bent over, breathing heavily outside his room after running once around the hospital. He felt as if his heart were about to explode, but he couldn't stop there. After giving it my all, he opened the door with difficulty and took a single step inside. Ping. Total distance run, 10 kilometers. You have completed running 10 kilometers. Jinwoo had finally done it. Huff! Huff! He dropped to his knees. His breath came out in puffs. His forehead and back were drenched in perspiration. Huff! Huff! A familiar message arrived as he caught his breath. Ping. You have completed daily quest, strength training. Rewards have been delivered. Would you like to check your rewards? Y/N. Jinwoo had been considering going straight to bed, like the night before, but he changed his mind. He wanted to check out these so-called rewards. Check! Ping. You have the following rewards. Reward 1. Full recovery. Reward 2. Ability points plus 3. Reward 3. Mystery box 1. Would you like to accept all? Why are there so many? That was his first thought upon seeing the full list. But the more he considered it, while a couple of the rewards sounded useful, there were some he wasn't quite sure about. First, he was in dire need of reward number 1, a full recovery. He felt like he was about to pass out. Since the penalties for failing were real, chances were these rewards for completion also had to be real. Either way, He had nothing to lose. What were the chances it would throw him into the penalty zone after saying that it'd reward him? Except, as soon as he did, Jinwoo was enveloped by a pale blue energy. This feels like... He immediately thought of Juhee. This felt similar to being treated with magic whenever he got hurt. If he had to describe the sensation, it was like a breath of fresh air cleaning out his lungs. Whoosh! He sensed the blue energy fading. He felt a bit sad about that. He stood and jumped up and down, then did some stretches, and moved his body every which way. Whoa! Both his racing heart and labored breathing had calmed. He didn't feel tired at all. He had been about to collapse, but he now felt refreshed, as if he had just woken up from a good sleep. The recovery was extremely effective. This is awesome. Jinwoo's eyes lit up. He wasn't sure whether it was magic or not, but it left a strong impression. So then, were those ability points for? As he looked back up, Jinwoo noticed a little box on the bed, and the stat screen floating in front of him. That must be the mystery box thing on the bed, but more important was the stat screen. It displayed a brief overview of his own stats. Name, Jinwoo Sung. Job, none. HP, 100. Fatigue, 0. Level, 1. Title, none. MP, 10. Stats, Strength, 10. Stamina, 10. Agility, 10. Intelligence, 10. Perception, 10. Available ability points, 3. Skills, Passive skill, Unknown, LV, Max, Willpower LV .1. Active skill, Dash LV .1. His stats were at a similar level to a newly created character in an online game he used to play way back in the day. Are these my current stats? He was presently at level 1. All his stats were pretty basic. It wasn't surprising, since he was classified as the weakest even among E-rank hunters. What got his attention were the skills. Willpower was his passive skill, and Dash was his active skill. They sounded weirdly familiar. Oh, thinking back yesterday, or more precisely earlier that morning, those words had been in some messages he'd received while being chased by centipedes in the penalty zone. They'd arrived about 3 hours in, when he'd been racing around with everything he had. You learn skill, Dash LV .1. You learn skill, Willpower LV .1. At the time, he'd been so focused on running that he didn't have the presence of mind to think about what it meant, but he did now. Jinwoo verified the details of the skills. Skill, Dash LV .1. Active skill, 5 mana required. Running has strengthened your legs. When activated, your speed increases by 30%. When in use, your mana will decrease by 1 every minute. Skill, Willpower LV .1. Passive skill, no mana required. You have endless willpower. When your stamina falls below 30%, willpower will activate, and you will receive 50% less damage. Was I able to learn Dash and Willpower because I kept running persistently? It made sense when he put it like that. It meant that if he kept doing the same action and met a certain condition, he might be able to learn a new skill. That's incredible! This was a huge advantage. Hunters could acquire skills only when they were first awakened or by learning them from a rune stone, which could sometimes be obtained from A-rank magic beasts. Rune stones could cost several 100 million won to over several 1 billion won. Recently, the most expensive rune stone was auctioned off for 7 billion won. That stone, which held the skill to fully cure many people at once, was purchased anonymously by an S-rank healer from a foreign country who emptied out all their life savings. Jinwoo's heart started racing. increased speed, and decreased damage. They weren't comparable to a skill costing several 1 billion won, but they were still great. And to receive them free of charge. Jin Woo didn't have a lot of magic, so it might be difficult to utilize them properly, but he was still excited to have them. And it says willpower doesn't even need mana. Mana probably meant magic. Meaning, even if he didn't have a lot of magic, he could still use willpower as much as he wanted. This was huge. But what does this unknown mean? Skill. Passive skill. Unknown, LV, max. Unknown was one of his passive skills. Passive skills should be activated automatically, but there was no other information. There isn't a single clue. With so little information to go on, Jin Woo knew there wouldn't be any point in contemplating it further. He decided to focus his attention on something else. Ability points. The 3 ability points he received hadn't been distributed yet. Stats: Strength 10, Stamina 10, Agility 10, Intelligence 10, Perception 10, Available ability points 3. I guess I can increase stats by 3 points? There were 5 different attributes on the stat list. They were all low, most likely because he was level 1. But if all of this was actually real, his decisions would have consequences. If his actual abilities changed according to his choices, how did they expect him to come to any kind of decision? Jinwoo's expression grew serious. Strength probably means power. He could guess what strength, stamina, and agility meant. They were common enough terms in video game stats. The problems were intelligence and perception, and like before, the system wasn't very user-friendly with its lack of explanations. If he raised his intelligence, would he get smarter? If he raised his perception, would he have keener senses? Whatever intelligence and perception were, they didn't seem particularly useful to him. Jin Woo was a combat hunter. What he needed was power, speed, or even stamina. If I had to pick one of those 3, it'd have to be power. Becoming stronger would be quite convenient. He also wanted to see what changes occurred physically if his stats went up. Ultimately, he invested all his points in what he thought would result in the most obvious change, his strength. 3 points to strength. Ping. Stats: Strength 13, Stamina 10, Agility 10, Intelligence 10, Perception 10, Available ability points 0. Is that it? That was it. The only change was the number in the strength stat going from 10 to 13 in the hologram screen before him. He didn't feel any hidden energy rising up from deep inside him like in an anime or a movie. Has anything changed? Jin Woo decided to test his strength. He positioned himself next to the bed and tried lifting it. He could feel its weight, but it was easier to lift than he expected. Still, he wasn't sure if this was because he'd gotten stronger or if the bed simply wasn't that heavy. I should have tried lifting it before I added the points. It was hard to make a before and after comparison now that he'd already used up his points. If only I had more. He was pursing his lips when he suddenly remembered something. The rewards for the penalty quest. The daily quest wasn't the only thing he completed today. He'd almost gotten killed, but he'd also completed the penalty quest and seen the notification saying that he'd received rewards. Jin Woo hurriedly called up his inbox. Your rewards for completing the penalty quest have been delivered. Would you like to check your rewards? Y/N. I knew it! He pumped his fist. Of course he would. You have the following rewards. Reward 1. Ability points plus 3. Reward 2. Mystery box 1. Would you like to accept all? Unlike the daily quest rewards, Full recovery wasn't an option, but Jinwoo was interested only in the ability points. He was worried there would be a difference in the amount awarded, as it was the reward for a penalty quest, but fortunately, he was given 3 points this time as well. Jinwoo excitedly yelled, "Add 3 points to strength." Ping. Stats. Strength, 16. Stamina, 10. Agility, 10. Intelligence, 10. Perception, 10. Available ability points, 0. His strength stat jumped from 13 to 16. He positioned himself next to the bed and flexed his arms. He found it easier to lift the bed than before. He had now verified there was an actual difference. It really works. He'd actually gotten stronger. According to the stats, he'd increased his strength by 60%, so there was no way he wouldn't feel a difference. Exhilarated, Jinwoo started lifting various pieces of furniture in his hospital room, making a racket. He was forced to stop after he was chided by the head nurse, who happened to be passing by and poked her head in after hearing all the noise. "I'm so sorry." Jinwoo breathed a relieved sigh after she left. But he couldn't calm down. His heart was racing. Ba-dump, be-dump. It was beating so hard, it almost hurt. There would be a quest every day with ability points as rewards. As long as the phenomenon didn't suddenly disappear, he would be able to live a completely different life from before. This was an amazing opportunity. To add to that, his stat screen also indicated his level. How can I increase my level? Jinwoo shook his head. Nah, that's probably not possible. Despite everything, leveling up still seemed too far of a reach. He didn't dare hope that it was possible. Quests and rewards were more than enough for him. He would increase his attributes with ability points. He'd become stronger today than yesterday and stronger tomorrow than today. He'd strengthen himself more and more every single day. Me, the weakest among E-rank hunters, the weakest hunter of all mankind, getting stronger? Never mind S or A-rank hunters. His C and D-rank colleagues would laugh if they heard him. They'd probably fall over themselves making fun of him. Jinwoo-sung becoming stronger? Jinwoo-sung, the weakest hunter of all mankind? But Jinwoo didn't care if people laughed at him. In fact, he was used to being mocked. He was just glad to have this opportunity. But he did begin to wonder, is this how a reawakening goes? It was rare, but there were cases in which a low-rank hunter became one of the best through reawakening. Did that mean all the hunters who got stronger via reawakening had experienced this phenomenon? I need to do some research. Curious, Jinwoo sat down in front of the computer situated in the corner of the room. There were quite a few amenities in these VIP accommodations provided by the association. Taka-taka-tak. His fingers moved quickly over the keyboard. He searched and searched and searched some more. He visited countless websites. This included a site that could be accessed only by those with hunter licenses. He even shelled out to access some promising documents that were locked behind a paywall. Even so, there was not so much as a single case comparable, much less identical to his. It's not the same. What he was going through was totally different from a reawakening. Reawakened hunters seemed to get their new powers in a manner similar to when they first awakened as hunters. No one had experienced anything like Jinwoo, whether it be hearing things at death's door, or being able to see their stats like in a video game, or increasing their power with points. Just in case. He made an anonymous post on a Hunters Only forum. Title: Something Strange Happened. Contents: I started seeing my stats on a floating screen like in a video game, and I can even upgrade them. Has anyone else experienced this? The comments section under the post exploded. Anonymous: Lol lol lol, here comes another nut job. Anonymous, you sure you're not crazy? Anonymous, what a freak. Anonymous, I think you play too many games. Anonymous, are you a cartoonist? Anonymous, get to a hospital FR. Anonymous, I want to hear more details. Anonymous, stop accepting anyone with a hunter's license and do some spring cleaning on this site. The tens of comments were all in a similar vein. Huh, Jinwoo sighed. He'd wasted a lot of time online with nothing to show for it. All he'd gained was the ridicule of people on the forum. If he'd gone to all these lengths but turned up empty. I guess I'm the only one. The one and only, a one-of-a-kind hunter. It would take time to realize the full potential of this phenomenon and how much help it'd be. But being the only one with this power didn't sound that bad. He looked around and realized it was already late at night. Where did the time go? Jinwoo frowned. His eyes were tired from staring at the monitor for so long. He massaged his temples for a while, and then got up to do some light stretching. He moved his body to and fro. While doing some side stretches, he spotted two boxes that had fallen to the floor. Oh! The mystery boxes. The small boxes were covered in simple wrapping paper and tied with plain ribbons, again reminding him of something from a video game. I guess they fell when I was making a mess. He'd forgotten that he'd received the boxes as rewards. Jinwoo picked up the one closest to him and opened it. A bandage? When he stared hard at the object that appeared to be a bandage, its information popped up in green letters. Item, bandage. Normal bandage. Good for small wounds. May be kept in your inventory. It's an actual bandage. He thought it might have a special power like treasures found in dungeons, but it seemed like that wasn't the case. Though I guess I've never heard of bandages appearing in a dungeon. He opened the other box, feeling half disappointed and half expectant. Inside was a ballpoint pen. He looked at it from every angle and pressed the top to make the ballpoint appear, but it really was just a regular pen. Item, ballpoint pen. An ordinary ballpoint pen. Good for writing memos. May be kept in your inventory. It looked like mystery boxes generated miscellaneous items at random. It hadn't been a complete loss, however. Although he wasn't in need of a bandage or a pen, thanks to the items, he'd learned of the existence of an inventory. Information screens for other items in the room didn't appear in green letters, so it was safe to assume this was a feature that pertained to items from mystery boxes. Inventory. At his command, a screen consisting of a graphic with dozens of empty squares materialized in midair. A level 1 user's inventory should have been empty, but his wasn't. There in the very first space was an item that was all too familiar. Is that? Jinwoo took it out. Ping. Item. Kim Sang-shik's steel sword. Attack power plus 10. It was Kim's sword that Jinwoo had grabbed in the underground temple. He thought he dropped it there. Good to see you again, bro. Jinwoo couldn't help smiling. Maybe because it had survived the near-death experience with him. He was happy to see it again. Also, it was too high quality to be left in that world. Didn't Mr. Kim say he paid 3 million won for this? Hunter-grade weapons look ordinary but aren't. A magic beast can't be hurt unless the weapon is imbued with mana. Because of this, weapons made for battling magic beasts are naturally expensive. I should use this guy for now. Jinwoo had fought against magic beasts with his bare hands until now because he couldn't afford a weapon. Even if it was a used sword, he was grateful to have it. This is mine now. If Kim saw it in Jinwoo's possession, he'd probably be frothing at the mouth trying to get it back. He was selfish to the point where he'd run away, and abandon the one who had saved his life. Jinwoo had both this sword and this new opportunity because he'd risked his life. He had no intention of giving up the weapon that easily. His eyes narrowed. He'd learned two things in that underground temple. First, he needed to get stronger. He'd almost died a number of times simply because he was weak. But that wasn't the only thing. He hadn't stopped the young choir man even though he'd known what the result would be. And he hadn't stood up for Song even though he knew Kim had been in the wrong. He'd turned a blind eye even though he'd known what needed to happen in order to survive. If he didn't want to feel ashamed, he had to become stronger. And the other lesson: no good deed goes unpunished. Jinwoo's good deeds had been met with betrayal. 3 of his colleagues had abandoned him even though he'd needed their help just to stand. He'd begged them to come back, but none of them had. They couldn't remember who had saved their lives. Give and take. From now on, he would never put his own life on the line for someone else out of the kindness of his heart. After all, wasn't one's own life the most important thing? These were the lessons Jinwoo learned after being on the brink of death. Be stronger and be tougher. I can do this. He was not one to make the same mistake twice. Nurse Yura Choi was sitting at a food cart, having a good time with a friend she hadn't seen in a while. Oh, that's right. Yura belatedly recalled the fact that her friend worked for the Hunters Association. Her current job at a big hospital for hunters was in large part thanks to this friend. You know a lot about hunters, right? As much as the next person. Why? Have you heard of a hunter with the ability to heal quickly? Healers are like that. Just one recovery spell and bam. No. Not by using magic, I mean unconsciously. Unconsciously? Like while they're passed out, or while they're sleeping. Her friend shook her head. Nah, not possible. That's called regeneration, and it's a special ability only certain A rank and above magic beasts have. But not people. No. I've never heard of a hunter with that ability. Alright. Had she been seeing things? Yura was nodding when her friend added. But who knows? It may be possible for an S-rank hunter. Yura perked up. S-rank? S-rank hunters are absolute beasts, but there's not a lot of public info about them. What was it again? There was some rumor going around that Yunho Beck from the White Tiger Guild can turn into some kind of monster. But Jinwoo Sung was an E-rank hunter. Hunters' ranks were public knowledge, and on the association's website for anyone to look up if they so desired. After the incident from this morning, Yura had searched for Jinwoo online out of curiosity. His rank is too low to have any special ability. Oh, a reawakening. She remembered hearing something about a reawakening when she passed by his hospital room yesterday or the day before. Did he reawaken as a high-rank hunter? Never mind being friends with an S-rank hunter. It wasn't easy for the average person to even meet one. Not only were they rare, they were also incredibly busy. What were the chances she'd have such an outstanding person as her patient? A hunter who'd just gone from E rank to S rank. Since people don't know how great he is yet, if she could score some points with him now, it might benefit her down the road. Opportunities to befriend an S-rank hunter didn't come easily. Some even tried paying fortunes just to meet S-rank hunters and failed. Yura's grin grew bigger as she daydreamed. Hey girl, did something good happen to you? Why were you smiling like that? No, it's nothing. Even as Yura shook her head, she found it hard to hide her smile. Wow, check him out. Did that patient always look so yummy? 2 young female nurses whispered to each other as they passed Jinwoo in the hallway. He pretended not to hear them and went back to his room. It had been a week since he'd started doing the daily quests. A lot had begun to change, including his body. Jin-woo stood in front of the mirror placed in the corner of the room. Ahem. Jin-woo looked himself over in the full-length mirror. Even though no one could see him, Jin-woo wasn't used to checking himself out and could only bring himself to peek after hemming and hawing for a few moments. Like he thought, he looked different. His body was transforming. I'm bulking up. The most obvious change was his muscles. He was leaner, and his muscles were more pronounced. Due to this, his shoulders were wider, and his whole body appeared bigger. But I don't look too stocky. He had the right amount of muscle in all the right places. If someone had to describe him in a single word, they might call him ripped. Even he had to admit that he looked good, so no wonder the nurses agreed. I guess it's all because of these quests. Jin-woo brought up the stat screen. Ping. Name, Jin-woo Sung. Job, none. HP, 100. Fatigue, 0. Level, 1. Title, none. MP, 10. Stats. Strength, 31. Stamina, 10. Agility, 10. Intelligence, 10. Perception, 10. Available ability points, 0. Skills. Passive skill, unknown, LV, max, willpower LV .1. Active skill, dash LV .1. His strength attribute was already over 30. He didn't know how effective raising the other stats would be, so he concentrated all his ability points into raising his strength for the time being, since that would be the most helpful attribute when fighting magic beasts. But this couldn't have happened to my body after only a couple of days just by exercising. There could be only one reason. As his strength increased, his muscles were changing in response for optimum effect. He couldn't think of any other explanation. He'd been slightly worried about investing his points solely in strength, but after seeing the results, he'd been very satisfied, and his worries had faded. Still, I do think I'm attracting too much attention. The nurses were talking about Jin-woo more and more. Since their job required knowledge of human anatomy, it was inevitable that they would quickly notice the change. Because of his keen hearing, Jin-woo was very aware of this. Looks like it's time to get out of here. All this attention wasn't good. He not only felt burdened by it, but he wanted to avoid anyone else finding out about the system. There was no point stirring something up for no reason. He wanted to upgrade his ability level in peace without anyone knowing. Getting discharged shouldn't be a problem. Luckily, all the test results had come back normal. He could leave at any time. Heck, the association and the hospital seemed to be hoping he'd leave soon. They probably didn't want to spend too much money on an E-rank hunter. It was said that the government paid for S-rank hunters' hospital bills as one of their many benefits, but Jin-woo lived in a completely different world from them. He decided it'd be a good call to leave the hospital soon. He wanted to check on something anyway. Where did I put it? He riffled through his pockets and took something out. It was a shiny gold key. It had a simplistic design and could easily be mistaken for a trinket. He gazed at it for a long while before shoving it back into his pocket.